My name is Tamsin Hart, 32 years old. Kylie's text hit my screen in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, the kind of ding that usually means a meme or a selfie from the dog, something bright and harmless. Hey sis, here's our housewarming registry. Can't wait to see what you pick. I let it sit while I triaged emails. In my head, I pictured a sweet list of throw pillows and a kettle. No urgency, no alarms. By the time I got home, I had half forgotten it. I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, clicked the link, and felt my jaw loosen like a hinge that had just given out. It was not a registry. It was a blueprint for a lifestyle. Tabs labeled Essentials, Luxury, Must-Haves before the holidays. Each item had columns for price, preferred color, estimated delivery window, and a cheerful note about how it would elevate their daily life. A $6,000 leather sectional, a custom metallic stand mixer, a floor lamp that cost more than my first car, and there, in the center, like a crown jewel, a tab labeled Cash Support. Bolded, highlighted, suggested contribution toward renovation fund, $20,000. Underneath, my name. Tamsin, we are counting on you for this one. I said nope out loud to the empty room and closed the laptop like the document might leak gold if I stared too long. I sat back and tried to swallow the heat rising up my throat. This was not a wedding, not a baby, not a crisis. This was my sister and her husband moving into Grandma Dolores's house, the one that had smelled like lemon cleaner and old books the last time I checked the closets. They got a roof for free and wanted me to bankroll the fantasy that came with it. I should have slept. I should have called it ridiculous and let the night smooth it over. Instead, I dialed her. She answered on the second ring, already in motion. Paint swatches, countertop quotes, a chandelier that would balance the foyer. I let her finish. Then I asked if she had any idea how unreasonable that registry was. She said yes, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Of course it was a big ask. Of course I had more than enough. Of course people who love you help you build your life. She said it the way other people say, pass the salt. Casual, assured. I felt something sharp settle in my chest. I am not sending a single dollar, I said. My voice surprised me. Flat. Calm. She did not argue. She did not cry. She said, then you are not invited, and she hung up. I stared at my phone and waited for the wave of guilt that used to hit me. It did not come. The party was Saturday. I stayed home. I made popcorn and watched a competition show where strangers build cakes that look like aquariums. This is what boundaries feel like, I told myself. A quiet night with no explaining. Around 7, my phone started buzzing. First Rachel, then Aunt Jen, then my mother. No one had been told anything except that I bailed. Rachel said the mood went crooked the minute people realized I was not coming. Kylie drifted through her own event with the air of a person who loves being wronged. It was always a role that came easily to her. 2 days later, my father texted me. Kylie told us what happened. We need to talk. I braced for the speech I had heard since I was 13, the one about kindness and family, and how Kylie just needs a little time to grow into herself. When I called, he was quiet. I told the story from the beginning. I did not add spices. I let the spreadsheet do the heavy lifting. He breathed once, heavier than usual, and asked a question I did not see coming. This is not the first time she has done something like this, is it? I had been keeping a ledger in my head for years, but this was the first time anyone asked for the numbers. I told him about last November, the $3,000 emergency, when Sean had supposedly been laid off, still unpaid. The month Kylie used my card for essentials and posted a resort weekend on Instagram. $1,700 I had to swallow with the new card fee. The rent I covered twice because she was still figuring things out. The veterinary deposit for her dog because she said he was like family. The holidays, the gifts, the quiet ways I chose peace over calculation because it felt cruel to keep score. It added up to almost $10,000 without counting the washer and dryer I would later regret. He did not interrupt me. He did not defend her. He said, almost to himself, we should have seen this sooner. Something loosened then. The air felt different, like a window had been cracked open in a room I did not know was stale. It was not that he believed me. He had always loved me. It was the way he said we, like he was stepping out of a fog. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice had the careful tone she uses when she is trying to cross a river on stepping stones. "What really happened with the registry, Tamsin?" I forwarded the link. 5 minutes later, she texted one word that told me more than a sermon. "Wow." Rachel messaged to say Kylie asked her for $250 for a furnace scare. Aunt Jen had floated $100 until Friday. Uncle Greg had been hit up about property tax on a property with no mortgage. The neighbor who painted the garage for a favor never saw gas money. People started comparing notes, and the trick fell apart. Kylie did not borrow. She juggled. She told each person they were the only lifeline. She kept every circle small, so no one saw the pattern. I did not post a thing. I did not call a single person to announce the truth. When people reached out, I sent the same spreadsheet Kylie sent me. I answered questions. I told the truth. The truth did what it always does when you let it breathe. It moved on its own. That weekend, my parents sat her down. I was not there. I know the contours because my mother called afterward and told me how it went. Kylie began with tears. Blamed stress. Blamed Sean. Said I was twisting everything because I was jealous of her new start. When they pressed, she flared. Said they were taking my side, which would have been hilarious if it did not also sting. I have not been the favored one since before middle school. Mom said the line I had always wanted to hear, and I could picture her hands on the table, folded like a churchwoman, steady. "We are not giving you another dollar." Dad added the sentence that would rattle the beams. "If you cannot manage that house on your own, maybe you should not be living in it." That night, Kylie left me a voicemail where every sentence was a weapon wrapped in lace. I had ruined her. I had turned the family against her. I had humiliated her publicly. I listened once and deleted it. There is a kind of silence that is not empty. It is a choice. 6 months earlier, on the day she moved into Grandma's house, I had given her a gift I was proud of. A top-tier washer and dryer set, stainless steel, touchscreens, quiet cycles, installed and hauled by a company that wrapped the cords like silk. I paid a little more than $2,200 because starting a home without lugging laundry to a laundromat felt like a real kindness. Standing in my kitchen now, I realize kindness is not always a gift. Sometimes it is permission. I dug through my email and found the invoice. I called the store. The policy was plain. If the purchase was under a year and under warranty, and if the units were in good condition, they would retrieve and issue store credit to the buyer of record. I scheduled a pickup. I did not do it to shame her. I did it because I had to start telling the truth with my actions. 3 days later, I pulled up with the truck. Sean's car was in the driveway. Kylie's was not. He opened the door and looked at me as if he had been waiting for this without knowing it. I held up the receipt and explained that the set was mine. The store had approved the retrieval. He stepped aside, no questions. The movers disconnected the hoses, wrapped the cords, and rolled the machines out like two silver animals being led from a show. Sean sat on the stairs and watched. When I signed the paperwork by the truck, he said, "Not angry, not bitter, only tired. She told me you flipped out over nothing. Now that I have seen everything, I do not know who I married." I had no answer that would not sound like I was winning. I nodded and left. Kylie called 4 times the next morning. I did not pick up. She texted a paragraph about violation and humiliation and how I never truly supported her. She called our mother and said I had stolen from her. Mom asked if she had paid for the appliances. Kylie said, "That is not the point." It was exactly the point. Something else was shifting, and I could feel it in my bones. It was not just that the family had stopped funding the performance. It was the house itself, the way it seemed to hum whenever anyone said Grandma's name, like there was still a rule in the walls that no one had read out loud. I told myself not to go looking for ghosts. I told myself that houses are just beams and wires and paint. Still, when the wind moved through the maple on the south side and knocked the chimes, the sound felt like a warning. Not to me, to her. A gentle one while there was still time. The morning after the appliance truck rumbled away, I woke to silence. No buzzing phone, no angry paragraphs, no tearful voicemails. Just a pause, heavy and unusual. I made coffee and sat by the window, half expecting her to appear in the driveway. She didn't. Instead, the calls started coming from everywhere else. Rachel again, then Aunt Jen, then even Uncle Greg, who rarely involves himself in anything that isn't about his boat. One by one, they shared versions of the same story. Kylie had asked them for money too, sometimes small amounts, sometimes bigger. Sometimes it was for a furnace, sometimes for property taxes, sometimes just to get through a rough patch. Always with urgency, always with a promise to repay. No one had ever seen the repayment. Rachel's voice cracked when she admitted she'd sent $250 for that furnace story. "I thought I was helping," she said. "I didn't know she'd already asked you." Aunt Jen confessed she gave Kylie $100 until Friday last spring. Uncle Greg wired her $500 for taxes. Even a neighbor who painted her garage thought he'd at least get gas money. He never did. For years, Kylie kept each of us in our own little corner, convinced we were her only lifeline. It was clever in a sick way. She knew if we compared notes, the whole game would collapse. I didn't have to expose her. All I did was tell the truth when people asked. I forwarded the same spreadsheet she had sent me, the digital wish list of luxury she called her Registry. I didn't embellish, didn't twist. I just let the facts speak. They were loud enough on their own. By midweek, the tide turned. Mom called again, and I could tell she had spoken to Dad. Her voice was different, less defensive, less sharp. "I saw it," she said. I knew she meant the spreadsheet. "I don't know what to say." Her words were careful, as if saying them too loud might shatter the kitchen glass. For once, she didn't defend Kylie. She didn't remind me to be compassionate or forgiving. She didn't say, "Shima, you know how your sister is." She just said, "Wow," like the ground had moved under her feet. The confrontation came Saturday. I wasn't in the room, but Mom described it later. Dad was stern, the way he only gets when his patience has been stripped away layer by layer. Mom said Kylie started with tears, claimed she was overwhelmed, that Sean had been putting pressure on her, that the house was a bigger responsibility than she expected. She said I was twisting everything, that I was jealous of her new life, that I had always looked down on her. When that didn't work, she lashed out, told them they were taking my side as if that was some betrayal. She cried louder when they didn't rush to comfort her. That's when Mom delivered the sentence I thought I'd never hear from her. "We're not giving you another dollar." And Dad followed with the blow that sent shockwaves through the house. "If you can't manage this home on your own, maybe you shouldn't be living in it." Kylie called me that night and left a voicemail dripping with venom. She said I had ruined her life, that I had turned everyone against her, that I had destroyed her reputation. Her words were sharp but hollow, like knives made of foil. I listened once and then deleted it. For the first time, her fury didn't stick to me. It slid right off. 6 months earlier, when she first moved into Grandma Dolores's house, I had carried in a housewarming gift I thought would be a symbol of love and support, a gleaming washer and dryer set. Stainless steel, touchscreen, energy efficient, the kind of machines you only buy once in a decade. I had paid more than $2,200 with installation. She hugged me in the doorway that day, told me I always came through, that she didn't know how she'd do it without me. I believed her. I wanted to. Looking back, I realized she saw me as something else entirely, not a sister, but an endless credit line wrapped in family ties. Retrieving those machines had felt like pulling a thorn out of my own hand. Necessary, painful, and strangely liberating. Sean's reaction still lingered with me. He hadn't argued, hadn't even raised his voice. He sat on the stairs, while the movers hauled the machines away, his elbows resting on his knees, his face pale and still. When he spoke, it wasn't with anger. "She told me you flipped out over nothing. Now that I've seen it, I don't even know who I married." His voice was quiet, but the weight of it pressed against my chest long after I drove away. That was the moment I realized her illusions weren't just breaking for me. They were breaking for him, too. The silence between Kylie and Sean grew louder than her rants. A few days later, word reached me through Rachel that Sean had packed a duffel bag and left. No dramatic fight, no screaming in the yard, just absence. He took a bag and his gaming console, told Rachel he needed space, and disappeared to a friend's place. Kylie didn't even know until she came back from Target and found his side of the closet empty. The perfect housewarming had started to unravel, thread by thread. When she finally reached him by phone, Sean told her the truth. He had seen the registry, he had seen the receipts. He knew she hadn't been honest with him about money. He couldn't trust her anymore. He hung up before she could reply. She called me next, 4 times in a row. I let each call ring out. The text came after, paragraphs accusing me of betrayal, of making things worse, of tearing her marriage apart. I didn't answer a single one. At first, I thought maybe the story ended there, that she would rage, burn bridges, and eventually simmer down. But Kylie never let silence settle. She turned to social media, posting cryptic quotes about betrayal and loyalty, hoping someone would side with her. Then she did something that made me laugh out loud in disbelief. She started a GoFundMe. The headline read, "Rebuilding After Family Abandonment." The goal? $35,000. The description painted her as a victim of cruelty and misunderstanding, left alone to manage impossible costs. The donations trickled in, mostly from distant acquaintances who didn't know the truth. When I sent the link to Dad, he replied with one word, unreal. It would have been pathetic if it weren't so dangerous. Kylie wasn't just lying to family now. She was broadcasting her story to strangers, painting herself as a martyr. The image was cracking, but she was still clinging to it with white-knuckled desperation. And while she fought to control the narrative, she overlooked something vital. Sean had started asking questions of his own, questions that would reveal secrets even I hadn't expected. The news came to me sideways, as it always did when Kylie lost control of the script. I was on the phone with Rachel, venting about work deadlines, when she slipped it in casually, almost as an afterthought. "Did you know Sean stopped by Aunt Jen's last night?" My pen froze above the page. Why would he do that? Rachel's pause stretched. "He was asking about the house. Said he thought his name was on the deed. Turns out it's not." The words sank like stones. Sean had believed the house was half his. Kylie had told him she'd added him right after the wedding. He'd mowed the lawn, hired contractors for gutters and landscaping, paid deposits for bathroom renovations, all under the illusion he was building equity in his own home. But Grandma Dolores's deed had been left to Kylie alone. She never added him. Worse, Rachel said, he'd stumbled across a bank statement in the mail that mentioned a home equity line of credit, nearly $50,000 drawn in Kylie's name. A secret loan she never told him about, filed under home improvements. He confronted her, and she dodged. When he pressed, she exploded. That's when he packed his duffel bag and walked out. I sat there stunned, listening to Rachel recount the scene. It was worse than I thought. Kylie wasn't just draining family. She was digging holes under her own marriage. Sean had been financing a future that didn't even legally belong to him. The betrayal was no longer just emotional. It was written in ink at the courthouse. Days later, the cracks widened. Kylie's GoFundMe languished at a pitiful $670, mostly from college friends who hadn't yet compared notes. The comments turned sour. "Didn't your grandma leave you a house? Where's Sean? Why do you need $35,000 for unexpected costs?" She deleted the campaign within a week, but the screenshots traveled faster than she expected. Aunt Jen sent me one. Her note was blunt. "She's gone too far." I thought maybe that would quiet things, but Kylie was relentless. When she couldn't manipulate strangers, she circled back to us. She called me again, her voice syrupy and trembling, saying she never meant for it to get this far, that she missed me, that everything was complicated, but she needed her sister. Still no real apology, just nostalgia dipped in desperation. I didn't answer. I let the voicemail sit like a rotting fruit in my inbox. The next morning, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a scam. But something made me swipe. A measured voice introduced himself as Grandma Dolores's lawyer. My stomach knotted instantly. He explained that Kylie's missed payments on the home equity loan had triggered a review of the estate documents. During that review, someone unearthed a clause most of us had overlooked during probate. It was a contingency, buried in Grandma's original will, that if the heir compromised the estate through debt, fraud, or irresponsibility, the property could pass to a successor. That successor, named in black ink years before, was me. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, certain I had misheard. "Me?" The lawyer confirmed it calmly. He explained that while Kylie had inherited outright in the final revision, Grandma had quietly included a safeguard. She must have known, even then, how easily Kylie could falter. With Kylie now defaulting on her second payment and the bank beginning foreclosure proceedings, the clause wasn't just theoretical, it was actionable. If I filed, the house could be transferred to me. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the grain of the wood, while his words spun through me. I hadn't wanted her house. I hadn't even wanted revenge. But here it was, a path Grandma herself had written, a net to catch what Kylie would inevitably drop. The irony was suffocating. The same house Kylie had used as her crown, her proof of superiority, her stage for manipulation, might soon belong to me. That evening I thought about calling Kylie, about warning her. But when I pictured her face, I saw only the smirk she wore when she sent me that registry, certain I'd cough up $20,000 just to stay in her orbit. I remembered Sean's hollow voice. I don't even know who I married. I remembered every loan, every swipe of my card, every time she twisted love into a transaction. No, I thought, this isn't revenge. This is consequence. The bank notice arrived 2 days later. Formal, clinical, cold. Delinquency notification. Property at risk of default. The clause activated. The lawyer called again, patient but firm. If I wanted to pursue it, now was the time. My hand hovered over the petition paperwork like it was a loaded weapon. In the end, I signed. My pulse slowed as I set the pen down. It wasn't about winning. It was about ending the cycle, about closing the faucet she had turned on everyone around her. 3 nights later, Kylie appeared at my door. Not dolled up, not armored in lashes or lipstick, just sweatpants and an old sweatshirt, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked smaller than I remembered, deflated. For the first time in years, she didn't open with fire. Her voice was low, almost childlike. Are you really going to take the house? I held her gaze, steady. I don't have to take it. The bank and Grandma's clause are already doing it. I only signed my name where she wanted it to be. She blinked, like she couldn't process a world where her actions carried weight. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched like wire pulled tight. Finally, she whispered, "Is this really how it ends?" I shook my head slowly. No, this isn't the end. This is the result. She left without slamming the door, which might have been the most surprising part of all. I stood in the quiet house, my hands trembling, my heart heavy. I hadn't wanted this power, but it was mine now, and with it came a truth I couldn't ignore. Kylie's downfall wasn't my doing. She had built it herself, brick by brick, lie by lie. All I had done was refuse to hold the walls up any longer. The legal process moved faster than even I expected. Once the second missed payment was confirmed, the bank initiated proceedings, and Grandma's clause slid into place like a key fitting a lock. The lawyer guided me through each step, steady and unhurried, as if this was all inevitable. In a way, it was. Kylie had pulled too many threads, and the tapestry of her life was unraveling in public view. My parents called one evening, their voices heavy with exhaustion. "We can't do this anymore," Dad said. "She's been knocking on our door at midnight, demanding money, crying, saying you're stealing her inheritance." Mom sounded torn, but even she admitted, "We gave her every chance. We can't rescue her from herself." For years, they had shielded her, defended her, even excused her worst decisions. Hearing them admit defeat was like watching pillars crack in an old cathedral. The structure we had all been forced to pray under was finally collapsing. Meanwhile, Sean filed for divorce. No fireworks, no messy fight. Just paperwork quietly slid across a table to her, his signature neat and final. He told a cousin that discovering the truth about the house broke something in him he couldn't repair. Trust, once shattered, doesn't glue back together cleanly. He had invested sweat, money, belief. She had given him deception. That was the ledger, and it was unbalanced beyond fixing. By the time the transfer papers arrived in my mailbox, the house was legally mine in everything but name. 90 days until final clearance, unless Kylie came up with the money. We all knew she wouldn't. Her GoFundMe was a ghost, her friends were evaporating, and even family had stopped answering her calls. Aunt Jen blocked her outright. Rachel ignored her texts. Uncle Greg left her on read. One by one, her audience disappeared, and without an audience, Kylie floundered. Then came the surprise. A letter, handwritten on lined paper. 3 full pages. When I saw her handwriting on the envelope, my stomach knotted, bracing for venom. But the words inside were different. No excuses, no manipulations, just confessions scrawled in hurried ink. She admitted to the lies, the debts, the way she'd twisted love into currency. She wrote that she had been selfish, arrogant, blind. She said she was sorry, not for losing the house, not for the fallout, but for treating people like stepping stones instead of anchors. And at the end, she asked for one thing, not money, not favors, just time, a chance to rebuild something with me. I read it 3 times. My hands shook, not from anger, but from the weight of it. Could it be real? Could she have finally hit bottom hard enough to see herself clearly? Or was it another mask, another performance designed to pull me back in? I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that blood ties could survive anything. But history sat beside me, whispering reminders of every voicemail, every accusation, every moment she had turned kindness into a weapon. My parents, ever hopeful, told me they were considering giving her another chance. "She's still our daughter," Mom said softly, like she was trying to soothe a wound that had never closed. Dad was quieter but nodded along. They wanted redemption, a neat ending. I understood. But I also knew forgiveness without boundaries is just permission to be hurt again. And I had no permission left to give. So I made my choice. I kept the house. I kept my distance. And most importantly, I kept my peace. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Kylie's letter sits in my desk drawer, folded carefully, not thrown away. Maybe someday I'll open it again. Maybe someday I'll answer her, but not now. Now I choose stillness. Now I choose safety. The cycle ends here. On the day the house officially transferred, I stood in the front yard beneath the maple tree. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of earth and something like lemon, a ghost of Grandma's cleaner. I thought about her, about the clause she tucked into her will like a quiet shield. She must have known. She must have seen. It wasn't an accident. It was her way of protecting me from a storm I hadn't even seen forming. That night, as I turned the key in the lock, I whispered into the empty house, "I won't waste this." And for the first time in years, I slept without waiting for the phone to buzz, without bracing for the next crisis. Kylie's story was still out there, unfinished, unraveling, but mine had finally reached a place of rest. Not triumph, not gloating, just peace.